Hello, friends. Full Glass Dani here, and I am going into a little deep dive mini class for you today on what seems to be everybody's favorite wine of the summer, Albarino. It's crazy. I've been having amazing conversations with my community and my clients. I had this wine in one of my six packs for the summer, summertime sipping wines, and it was really everybody's favorite. Really fascinating to me. So, I wanted to give you a little bit of a deep dive so you can understand this wine a little bit more. If you are a fan of wines like Sauvignon Blanc, this is a really great one to explore beyond Sauvignon Blanc because it's similar but different. And it really is great for the dog days of summer, which we're in right now. So Albarino it is, right? And usually there's a little squiggly thing on the end. I'm sorry, I don't always put the accents on things, but it's Albarino for that reason. And in general, this is, I mean, in my humble opinion, it is the most famous white grape of the Iberian Peninsula. So when we're talking about that, that would be Spain and Portugal. So this is a grape that is mostly grown along the Atlantic coast. Okay, so in Spain, that would be an area called Galicia, which is the northwestern part of Spain, and then across the border, just south of it, into Portugal, where it's actually known as Alvarinho. So it's the same grape, just different pronunciation. So in particular, within Galicia and Spain, it's most famous from an area called Rias Baixas. I'll be talking about that a little bit more in detail next. And then in Portugal, you'll probably see a bottle called Vinho Verde, which is the example that you'll be getting Alvarinho from. Now, a bottle of Vinho Verde can actually it can be a blend of a couple different grapes, but Alvarinho is usually one of the predominant ones with that. So when I'm talking about Alvarinho, it's kind of on the same lines as that Vinho Verde as well. And then for those of you that might be in California, or I'm in Reno, so we're very close to California, I actually get to see quite a bit of Albarino being grown in California right now, which is really neat. But you probably won't see that if you're not like local to here. But there are some really fun examples coming out from there, especially from the Amador County and El Dorado region. So, New Zealand does Albarino, Oregon does Albarino, just in very small quantities. So when we're talking about this grape, it's coming from Spain and then it's coming from Portugal. Those are like the star regions for it. So let's talk about Rias Baixas a little bit more. So as I mentioned, this is northwestern Spain. It's along the Atlantic coast, which really influences the climate of this area. Okay, so they actually call this green Spain because it is so lush, so green. And, you know, with that, with all that moisture and humidity from the Atlantic Ocean, it's not the most ideal place to grow grapes because usually humidity can be really bad for grapes. So Albarino is a grape that has really thick skins, and so it's one of the few grapes that really thrives in this area, which is why it's become the star grape. So yeah, it's a cool and damp climate in Rias Baixas. They get up to 50 inches of rainfall a year, which is crazy, and it's named after actually these flooded plains that come in from the Atlantic Ocean, which brings all that moisture and all of that water. So Rias Baixas really is, I would say it's more of a tough region for other grapes to be grown, but Albarino is really the star here because it can handle all of that. Now, there are subregions in Rias Baixas. I'm just going to point out a couple. We've got Val dos Salnes, O Rosal, Condado de Teja, and Sotomayor. Apologies if I said any of those incorrectly. I always put a French accent on everything, whether it's Spanish or French, sorry. But those are subregions. So if you see that on a label of Albarino, that's really cool because that means it comes from a very small, specific region within Rias Baixas, within Galicia, within Spain. So it's really cool to just like see just how from small of an environment that or small of a region your wine can come from. So as I said, Albarino is a star grape here. The vineyard acreage has actually skyrocketed in the last 30 years. And that's why if maybe you've kind of seen this grape a little bit in the last few years, but you weren't really familiar with it before. It's become very, very popular, I would say, in the last decade. But it's actually the region has been focusing on creating quality Albarino since like the 80s, right? So 30 something years, which is really cool. So I have this beautiful picture of a very classic vineyard that we were looking at. This is something you don't really see in too many wine regions. And that's because Rias Baixas historically would train their grapevines on these trellises, right? So they would be trained very, very high above the ground. You could actually walk underneath them if you wanted to. And that was to promote the air circulation and airflow to keep these grapes from getting too much humidity or too much moisture. So it's a common theme here with that, right? Now, these days, there's a little bit more technology and a little bit more, we're training our grapes in different ways. It's not all going to be these traditional trellises, but it is still cool to like, I don't know, to see because you don't see that very often. So high off the ground that you could walk underneath them. Okay, so what are we looking at with how Albarino actually tastes? As I mentioned, if you are a Sauvignon Blanc fan, you're going to love Albarino as well because it's very similar but different. So this is a very dry, refreshing, crisp wine, and that's because there's no sugar, of course. That's what makes it dry. And the acidity is medium plus to high here, meaning there's going to be a little bit of that sourness on the sides of your cheeks whenever you take a sip, which adds to that refreshing note, which is really beautiful. Now, the thing with Albarino and how it can differ from Sauvignon Blanc a little bit is it could have a little bit more of a fuller body because just the way that a lot of wineries will make this wine or age it or things like that can add to that. So it can usually be a little bit weightier than Sauvignon Blanc. But in general, we see light to medium expressions of this wine. Now, as far as flavors, this is usually a very fruit forward wine. And what we see in Albarino, there's a lot of variation, which I think is really beautiful. This grape can come out in so many different examples. So first of all, we're gonna get like stone fruit at the forefront. I often get a lot of like peach or nectarine, and sometimes it's a very like peach juice kind of note. That doesn't mean it's gonna be sweet, but it gives you that illusion of like a juicy, really like canned peaches almost. You can also sometimes get like pineapple, honeydew melon, and then on the citrus end, lemon zest is really common, or just like a lemon juice kind of thing. So all different styles, and again, that depends on the way the winery is making the wine or where it was grown specifically within the Ria Spicius region. Now, I've got sea spray on here, which is a really beautiful way of saying that your wine might smell or taste a little salty. I don't think that's weird. What's really cool though is because these grapes are grown so close to the Atlantic Ocean that they can actually pick up this beautiful salinity from that ocean. And it's really cool when you taste a wine. Again, it's not going to make your wine taste salty, but it'll just give you that like the memory, or just to make you think that maybe you are like alongside the ocean because you pick up that in the wine, which is so cool. I absolutely love it. And that's what makes this wine one of my favorites for those summertime temperatures. Now, if the wine was aged in oak or it has a little bit of age on it, then we can get a little bit more of this pear or almond note. That's what comes with age. So that's what's so cool about Albarino is that there really are so many different expressions. It's still very, light, crisp, refreshing, great for those summertime temperatures, but depending on the producer, you're going to get a lot of different varieties. So hopefully this inspires you to go pick up a bottle. If you are local to Reno, you can always get wines from me. I still have a couple of these summer 6-packs available. But if you're not watching this in real time, I really think that this is a wine that you can go and find on store shelves or at a wine shop or, in your favorite wine bar. And it's really fun to try it. It's something a little different than maybe your usual go-to if you're usually going to like Sauvignon Blanc and stuff. So as always, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. You can always comment below or DM me on Instagram or Facebook, and I will see you guys in our next little mini class. Hope you enjoyed this one. Cheers.